Welcome to the Archives Without Tears Key Concepts series, Module 4, Processing and Preservation. These modules provide very brief and basic overviews of the more in-depth content available through the Pennsylvania State Archives 2-day Archives Without Tears workshops. These concepts were first compiled by the American Association for State and Local History, AASLH, as the Basics of Archives course. With funding from the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, the Pennsylvania State Archives adapted these principles into Archives Without Tears, or AWAT, an in-person 2-day workshop offering practical and accessible guidance for historical records repositories. This module, Processing and Preservation, is one in a series of key concept overviews. Processing and preservation are the physical steps taken in preparing material for use by researchers and for long-term storage. In this module, we will discuss arrangement, provenance, original order, collection and series, and basic preservation. After inventorying records, either as part of the accession process or through preliminary processing, records arrangement is the next consideration. Records should be organized to reveal content and significance, simultaneously being prepared for use intellectually and physically. Decisions made here will ultimately influence the creation of the finding aid, which will be discussed in a later module. There are two fundamental archival concepts pertaining to arrangement, both which are critical to providing full context to collections. First, provenance, from the Latin provenere, which means to come forth, or where did they come from? Or more importantly, who was their creator? Whether a business, individual, community, or an organization, it's imperative to keep records grouped by their creator, as this often determines their collection, and make sure that the records are not pulled out and grouped by topic or subject. Note that a donor isn't always the creator, despite having been a long-term custodian. Secondly is original order. Once a creator is clear, it's necessary to determine how that creator maintained or intended to maintain their records. Retaining this structure can provide additional insight and context into both the creator and their records. Perhaps it's easier to visualize as we begin to talk about collections and series. In this example, the Horace McFarlane papers, the collection consists of a group of records by one creator, while the series are the subheadings or record types within the collection. In some instances, original order may be apparent, and a collection can easily be broken down into series, such as here, where we see correspondence, diaries, addresses and awards, glass plates, and lantern slides, including this image, or the crate of strawberries. Each series could be organized in various ways, whether they're chronological, alphabetical, or by subject, the important point being that the structure reflects the creator's system. What about cases where there is no evident arrangement, or where things might be randomly arranged? Unfortunately, it's not uncommon for records to be dumped into a box and left for someone else to deal with. In these cases, it is especially important to research and determine an intended or likely arrangement, or otherwise establish an arrangement. Often, we should be able to group things by series or like record types, and thereunder perhaps by chronological or alphabetical arrangement. There are exceptions to every rule, but it's important to keep records grouped by creator and the original order where possible. Whether the arrangement is evident or not, you need to research the record's origin. Where did they come from? You need to understand the creator, or who created them. Is it a business, individual, community, or another type of organization? What was the relationship with or the contributions to the community? What was the time period active? Were there any impacts of historical significance or events of note? When researching, remember that your repository may be a good place to start, both in your historical collections, but also in your accession and acquisition records. Once the provenance is established, or who the creator was and there's information collected about them, and the arrangement is established, or how records were used or likely used by the creator, the determination must then be made if records will be processed at the container, folder, or item level. Item level processing, where each item will be individually identified, is the most detailed, but it is often prohibitively time-consuming. At the other end of the spectrum, container level processing provides researchers a range of what might be found in any given container. For example, a carton of correspondence dated 1912 to 1936, or a group of registers ranging from Blasco through Clark. Folder level processing falls somewhere in between. Often collection size, significance, and staff resources dictate the level of processing that can be undertaken. It is always possible to conduct container-level processing and flag important things to return to for detailed processing later. Following initial processing determinations, records must be physically prepared for long-term storage and researcher use. Before we proceed, a note on conservation versus preservation. Conservation tends to consist of active repair or stabilization, whether it's mending, deacidification, or other document remediation, whereas preservation are those steps taken to prevent further decay or damage. And in our instances, preservation might include examining materials for damage, removing them from inappropriate housings, whether they're acidic containers or folders. Could also include unfolding or unframing materials, and ultimately placing them in proper archival containers and ensuring the best environmental conditions possible. The first rule of preservation is to do no harm, and to that end, records should be handled infrequently and handled carefully to avoid damage. They should be returned to storage promptly, as the proper containers and environment contribute greatly to their longevity. Avoid using ink, as accidents or mistakes can permanently alter historical materials. May seem a no-brainer, but as the illustration shows, there's no such thing as too clean when it comes to working with collections. When able, make use of archival supplies. There are an abundance of different supplies to accommodate different sizes and types of materials, but always be sure you're getting what you think you're getting and work with reputable vendors. There are several important considerations regarding archival supplies. First, is acid-free enough? To start, let's look at the word lignin-free. What is lignin? Well, it's a compound found in all vascular plants, including those which are used to make paper. It gives off acid as it deteriorates, and acid makes paper yellow and brittle. If your supplies are acid-free but not lignin-free, they won't remain acid-free for long. Next, looking at the pH scale, we see that ratings below 7 are considered acidic, and for archival purposes, those ratings above 9.5 are too alkaline. Vendors manufacture buffered or alkaline supplies, which in most cases when dealing with paper are better than simply acid-free or lignin-free, as they can actually neutralize acidity and to some degree alleviate effects of acid migration. If you can only afford limited supplies, target those which come in direct contact with your material, such as folders, which come in letter, legal, and various oversized options, interleaving paper, and ideally archival boxes, which are available in a wide variety of shapes and sizes also. It's worth noting that boxes also protect from dust, dirt, insects, ultraviolet light, and even water. When dealing with plastics, it's best to use polyester or other inert plastics. Polyester is also often referred to as mylar. It's most important to avoid PVC, which can ruin collections as it degrades into a gooey mess. As you begin working with and rehousing materials, remember, do no harm. It is best to remove metal fasteners where practical, including binder clips, paper clips, and staples, which can all rust and damage documents. Here, an archivist spatula is used to uncrimp the back of a staple before gently pulling it through the front of a document, leaving only the two small holes from the staple. Once unfastened, loose items can be grouped in folders and can be separated with sheets of acid-free paper. Place loose materials into archival folders and then place those folders into archival boxes. Avoid overfilling your folders and boxes as it causes additional wear to those materials as well as to your documents. Some of the most common sizes are shown here, including the 1 cubic foot carton, as well as various sizes of document cases and boxes. Typical archival storage cartons are about 10 by 12 by 16, which can accommodate either legal or letter folders depending on the orientation. In general, avoid using banker's boxes if possible. Not only are they acidic, but often they may be much larger in size, which can be unwieldy to handle. Bound volumes can present their own storage challenges, particularly if you've ever encountered red rot while wearing a white shirt. Red rot, or the disintegration of the leather historically used on bound volumes, can often be cleaned with a dust brush. Structurally speaking, if the spine of a volume is in good condition, it can be stored vertically on metal shelves. If stored vertically in boxes, be sure that the spine is down to avoid strain. Bound volumes can also be stored horizontally, flat. Just don't stack them so high that the bottom volumes are crushed. Those volumes that have broken spines can be stored in drop front boxes. Phase boxes can be purchased for particularly rare, fragile, or valuable volumes. And bound volumes can also be wrapped in paper and stored on shelves. Maps, architectural drawings, and other oversized materials should ideally be stored flat in powder-coated metal flat file cabinets. but that may not always be possible depending on space and other available resources. Alternatively, large items may be stored in oversized archival containers like drop-front boxes, or, if necessary, they can be stored rolled, preferably in archival tubes. Scrapbooks often hold a wealth of important photographs and information. Unfortunately, they were frequently constructed of low-quality, highly acidic paper that yellows, turns brittle, and does the same to the photos and attachments placed within. Oftentimes, a well-intentioned creator may have slathered the backs of photos with adhesive and secured the images to the pages, forever obscuring identifying information that may have been written on the back of the photos. It's recommended to scan or otherwise obtain high-quality digital images of each page that can be handled in lieu of the original. Be sure to capture any identifying information written on the page. The scrapbook itself and/or the loose pages or images can then be placed in appropriate archival storage. So far, we've talked about some of the most frequently encountered materials in archival collections. Some other items to note include newspaper, which despite being an excellent resource for information, is physically difficult to store and is typically printed on low-quality, highly acidic paper, which not only becomes brittle and discolored itself, but can transfer acidity to surrounding materials. Newspaper clippings are recommended to be photocopied on acid-free paper or scanned, and the originals disposed of. Significant individual or small runs of newspapers can be physically preserved according to the archival principles previously discussed. To preserve larger quantities of newspaper, digitization and microfilm are recommended. Microfilm itself has historically been viewed as a long-term archival storage medium and still remains in use. Microfilm should be stored in individual boxes, and similar to most photographic mediums, cooler temperatures are preferable but should not exceed 70 degrees or 50% relative humidity. Generally, audiovisual materials should be stored upright on edge and again targeting those lower temperature and humidity levels. Additionally, be mindful of any magnetic fields such as those possibly created by transformers or large speaker magnets. In review, processing and preservation are the physical steps taken to prepare materials for researchers and long-term storage, including arrangement, where it's necessary to determine 1. Provenance, or the record's creator, and 2. The original order, or how the creator used and maintained their records. From there, you can assign distinctions between collections and series, which helps with both the physical and intellectual control of your records. Further, determining what supplies are needed and how to best apply them to specific records types ensures the long-term preservation of your important collections. Thank you for viewing this module of Archives Without Tiers Key Concepts. For the next in the series, please view Module 5, Finding Aids. If you have any questions or would like more information about the full Archives Without Tiers workshop, please contact ra-statearchives@pa.gov. Thank you.